Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the LiftAffect podcast. I am your host, Matt McNeil, founder, clinical director, and director of human performance at LiftAffect, where we assist professional pilots with maintaining better mental health and optimizing their mental skills. The goal of this podcast is simple: to help pilots and other high liability professionals and disciplines come out of the shadows to discover how we can live better lives personally and professionally. Join us each episode as we discuss various topics ranging from mental health, mental skills and performance, to business, entrepreneurship, and a few other surprises along the way.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another LiftAffect podcast. My name is Karl Keller, and I'm your host. Along with me is the star of the show, as always, Matt McNeil, that shining star above.
Yeah,
I would stay on the hill.
I laugh every time I hear that. Like, how should I introduce this guy?
I know. I'm going.
He's like, let's bring the clown out.
The man, the myth, the legend.
Yeah, no legend. Myths there's a lot of myths out there. There's some funny ones. Man, we could probably do a show on some of the crap that has been made up about LiftAffect and about the work that I do. It's crazy.
Oh, wow.
Stuff that I've heard. Insane.
I would love. Do you have a couple you want to throw out right now, or you want to wait for a future time to put them all together?
I probably should consult my attorney before I bring this stuff.
Oh, there you go. And plus, I already know
there's some really, really funny ones that have spread at union, especially in the union, among like some support programs out there that, peer support programs. Like, there's just been some really funny, ideas about like what LiftAffect is doing, and what people that work at LiftAffect and Matt and
I do remember you telling me about some of the people that supposedly work at LiftAffect.
Right. Like,
those imaginary.
I didn't know I employed a psychiatrist because I wasn't aware I had one on staff. Because I don't. But just super funny, funny stuff. Pretty funny stuff. Like, mental health and mental performance is so like stigmatized at the airlines, and it's stigmatized with physicians and attorneys and
almost everywhere.
Everywhere. It's so much stigma that there's like this, the more you try to the more actual work that you do that actually helps people, the more shit you get about what you're doing. It's like, it's almost you're doing something right when there's like a big backlash against what you're doing, which is just interesting. I mean, there's a lot of dynamics around why that is. We could probably get into, but anyways, I don't even know how we ended up here, but it's pretty funny. I'll come up with I'll drop a few at some point. I'll come up, with some funny things that we've heard. Apparently I've got a third hand or something. I don't know. It's like,
it's nice to be able to interject some levity and some humor and not make this such a serious topic, because unfortunately mental health is a very serious topic. It's not something to laugh at lightly, although right. Sometimes humor is a really good form of medicine for people to make sure it's part of their medicinal toolkit, I think. Really, well, we don't do enough of it sometimes.
I agree. You got to, sometimes it's only funny, if you don't laugh, you're just probably going to cry. And it's only funny because it's true. And like, humans, we're such goofy creatures. I mean, why do we have, there's reasons we have these problems that other species don't. And it's sort of our greatest genius, and it's our biggest downfall, is we have got these brains that are just capable of doing so much, but creating so much chaos and craziness in our lives, that it's at some level there is some humor to it. It's very serious, but we're goofy creatures, and as pilots, we are like, every profession's probably got their own unique idiosyncrasies, but pilots are a squirrely bunch. We are a
I would
goofy
say, as professional as we are in the cockpit, outside of the cockpit is kind of sometimes a different animal.
It's a different thing. It's a thing.
It's a thing. It definitely is a thing.
Yeah.
But you know what I think is, just without getting political, because this is not a political based podcast.
Yep.
Today's environment has made it more difficult, I think,
Oh,
to use humor as a tool, because we take everything so literal, and people get offended by what's said, because people are always kind of going, well, I don't know if I should say that. I'm going,
well,
it's like a big comedian. I mean, it's not what you say, it's the context and what it is said. And so when people just need to be able to go, you know what, laugh, smile, interject something that doesn't depress the daylights out of you. And even if it's just a second or 5 seconds, that's the road that you have to start walking on.
I don't think things are black and white. This is good, this is bad. Like it's not that way.
Shades of gray.
And there are things that need to change, that have needed to change for a very long time. And that's a good thing. Part of what's created some problems, though, and there's really good research around this, is the level of fragility is off the charts. And if you want to read a great book, who wrote this book? I just read the book. It's sitting upstairs on my bookshelf. Coddling of the American Mind. Read that book. It's all based on research and science of like what has happened to what have we done to our kids? And we have, convinced everybody that the world is just totally unsafe in every way. And we need to, protect everybody, every kid from everything. Don't let them go to the bathroom by themselves because something could happen. Don't let them go to the mall because they could get kidnapped. And there's the boogeyman around the corner, even though statistically that's bullshit. It's like safer now than it ever was. This fragile environment of like, we can't talk about things. Look, the flight deck, you don't talk about religion and politics in the flight deck because it's a safety critical environment. And it's so heated that if there's disagreement, while you're trying to perform your job, that's a breach of safety at some level, which is why I never talked about religion and politics in the flight deck. Especially if there's opposing, I guess, viewpoints on it. It's not a good place to do that. There's a better place to talk about it. But to say we just can't talk about anything because people might get their feelings hurt. There's ways to have conversations respectfully, but I think we've really created a terrible environment where everybody just, gets to cancel each other out because they just disagree about something. Certainly there are, things have changed for the better in many respects. For certain groups of people, it's really changed, and it's been a better thing. I've got a daughter. It's not always been easy for that, but this, like, we can't have a conversation because somebody might disagree and they'll be so offended that I want to take you down. Is not, I don't think it's leading to good things. I don't think it's the world that we actually want to live in. So that's enough about that. What do we got?
I do want to add one last thing on this. And I try to look at the different news outlets, both domestic and international. Yeah. So I try to get a perspective of things because I want to be able to talk intelligently to my children. But I heard something from a contributor that happened to be on CNN, and his name is Van Jones. And he was talking about safe spaces and safe places. And he was talking about, and I thought it was a great statement. He said, people need to have a physical safe place if they feel physically threatened, but he said, in many cases, so many of the younger generation he was particularly talking about in this case, have used that as a tool to use it, in, even when it's just about just conversation, and go, well,
Yes.
I don't feel safe anymore. And he goes, life does have conflict, and being able to deal with it and deal with different differences of opinion without feeling like as soon as someone starts talking that you want to say, raise the safety flag and go, we can't talk, or
Right.
that I have to
This has
feel
happened at
offended or
this has
threatened.
happened at college university
Yeah.
campuses. And some like University of Chicago has taken a stand where I think their president of the university said, this classroom is not a safe space. We are going to talk about hard things.
And we need to.
If you want a safe place, go form your own club, and that has its own rules. You can do that. That's fine. But we've got to talk about difficult things. We can do it in a respectful and caring way, and we can do this compassionately. But we got to talk about difficult things. And LiftAffect, when I started LiftAffect, I was told, you are never going to be able to do this. No pilot is ever going to talk about mental health. No airline is ever going to let a pilot talk about mental health. No union is ever going to do anything to help a pilot with mental health. We're only going to use peer support, and that's it. I was thrown out of every room. I was threatened. And I basically said, fuck you. I'm doing it anyways, because it matters. And so I'm very comfortable with not being comfortable. I spend my living doing that with people, is, helping them navigate the discomfort to be able to break through to the other side. So, but I agree. We can't just, physical safety. Yes, you need to have physical safety. But like, I don't agree with this. This isn't safe. This is creating more problems.
It's almost like it drives people to not talk about things.
Yes.
In many
Well, they're
ways.
worried about getting sued, or worried
Yep.
about getting canceled, or worried about, it's things have to change. I think there's some good things that have changed too. It's not all good or bad. It's not like, there's some progressive things. There's some good things about it, and there's some things that aren't good about it. Conservative things, there's some good things about it. There's some things that aren't good about it. So
Sorry, I'm involved in dinging here today.
you're a busy guy, man.
Well, we didn't mean to get off down the rabbit hole. We were talking about laughter and humor, but it does have a serious implication with things. So it is worth mentioning.
I agree.
I tell you what, why don't we take one of our listeners' questions, and I'll throw it at you.
Cool.
And you take it where you take it.
Mm-hmm.
The listener said, I love the podcast on mindset. As a 121 instructor, I see the importance of this. Can you talk more about the practice application using mindset training to enhance performance in the flight and training environment?
So what do you do as an instructor? You're in a position of teaching, of helping people navigate that, the environment of learning and of evaluating, where mindset is huge. We've made the case that mindset there's either fixed or growth. Fixed is problematic because it doesn't, go back and listen to, I don't even want to open that up because I'll talk for the next hour on that, which is not the question. So what are some things you can do? As an instructor, your first thing is you've got to talk the talk and walk the walk. It separates the authentic, the actual talented, from the ones that probably shouldn't be there. You can't train something if you don't actually do it yourself. So it's really important that you talk the talk. Study after study has demonstrated that having a growth mindset is imperative to long-term success. And there's no way around that. And so if you don't have a growth mindset, if you're an instructor that's got a very fixed mindset with even how you approach training, then it's going to be difficult to get people to grow with their mindset. You've got to be able to demonstrate that.
It seems like there's two parts to this that you're kind of setting up. One is what in this case, the instructor needs to do. In this case, walking the walk.
Yeah. I want to approach the instructor. I'm going to tell the instructor how to do this, not the student. That's
Okay.
how, that's my, is that okay? Can I
I
approach it
thought
from
you were,
that?
I guess I was, I took this as what are the things the instructor needs to get themselves prepared for? And then what tools do they want to give the student?
That's what I mean. Yeah. I want to approach it from an instructor mindset.
Okay.
Cause I've been an instructor, and I mean, I teach for a living. That's what basically, I'm a firm believer in it. So I'm from the instructor's point of view. What do you got to, you got to talk the talk, which is why you're listening to the podcast and why you're writing in the question. So right on, high five to this man or woman who sent the question in. So second is you got to be able to verbalize elite mindset in your instruction. So a few ways you can do this. One is be aware and on the lookout for a fixed mindset voice among your students. What would you look for, Karl? If you like, how would you be looking for that sort of fixed mindset voice? What would some of the things they could and students could be saying that indicates they're in a fixed mindset voice?
Boy, talk
Or
about
something.
throwing my back at me.
Yeah.
Wasn't prepared for that. Boy,
How about old dogs can't learn new tricks?
I think that was me you're talking about now. But I feel like when I think about things like, oh, there's no way I can do this, or this just seems like something that I can't learn, or I'm not good enough for this.
Not good enough.
And that was something. And when I was an instructor, I felt like even if they didn't verbalize it, it was always that lack of self-confidence, and they would express it in multiple ways.
Yeah. But
it all came down to like, this is I'm in over my head, and I shouldn't be here.
Correct.
Type thing. Even though they want to be there, they feel like, okay, I don't deserve to be here. I don't know how I got here. I want to be here, but I don't know what.
And that's a big problem with a lot of people are getting up to the airlines with very little experience. And so
more so now than I think ever
upgrading in a year.
I thought
at a major.
I thought the mid 90s were a heyday time. This is it. This
is crazy. So, and there's problems with this. This is a very bad idea. We could talk about that later. So with new students, people that are inexperienced, if they're going to feel like they are, imposter syndrome, way out of their depth, because many of them are. But regardless, your job is to train them. You got to get them up to speed. So the first thing I would be looking for is hearing that voice of fixed. With the older guys, it's old dogs can't be taught new tricks. It's the way I'm old school. I hear that too. I'm old school. Look, there's some good stuff out of experience, 100%. You need that. But when it becomes like, I'm not going to learn anything new or approach this differently, that's a fixed. So what you can do in that is so how do you overcome that? I mean, some people are going to be like, screw you, I don't care. I'm fixed. I'm just going to get through my training event and that's it. Then it's kind of like, okay, well, I guess I'll just either you pass or fail. I don't really spend a lot of time on those kinds of students. I want to work with people that want to grow. If you don't want to grow, go somewhere else. And I would say too, is instructor, come get some training on mental. We've got a course, mental skills for flight and ground training performance. It's not just for people that are having a hard time getting through their check rides. It's also for instructors to be able to do some of this coaching with their students. So come and take the course, for God's sake. It's the best way to do this. We'll teach you all of this. I would be looking for that mindset. And then I would ask the magic question, is that thought elite or average? In fixed, I just think of fixed as average. It's average. Elite is growth. And pilots, we don't want to be average. We want to be elite. That's in our cloth. That's in our DNA. And so, that's a very, is that thought you're having elite or is it average? That's a really powerful place to start. And then its follow-up is how could we make that elite? How could we go from average to elite with that thought? Get them to tell you. It's amazing how well that works. When somebody makes a comment that's negative around their training, it's important to try to help them flip that over. How do you turn it from negative into a positive? Like that little critical voice in your head that's telling that you can't do something, and turn it into a positive by replying with like a growth mindset approach. Does that make sense?
Yeah, or a learning, a
Yeah.
mentoring moment. If it was a negative experience, use it as a way, like you say, to grow from. Going, okay, you've learned how not to do things, or what can happen when things don't go right.
Yep.
Okay, so now that's in your tool. You won't be surprised the next time you start seeing those things.
Yeah.
Because if everything works perfect, I think that is even more dangerous, because it doesn't. You're not prepared for the when things don't. If everything was always worked the way it's supposed to.
Yes.
You gotta be able to handle adversity or the unexpected.
And I think what you're demonstrating with these techniques is that if you're going to talk the talk and walk the walk, this is how you do it. Listening for those voices and calling it out and saying, how could we go from average to elite? And let's turn this negative and let's flip it upside down and work from a growth perspective, which is like, let's, turn it into maybe a positive, but like where can we grow from this instead of die from it? That's the first thing. You got to talk the talk. You got to walk the walk. Second is you've got to be able to provide feedback that, elite mindset feedback. And so the most important thing is avoid praise by talking about ability. That is so fixed and so average. Ability. I never talk about ability, not with my kids. I never do with students. I don't do it with my clients. We don't talk about ability. We talk about effort. Effort matters. Ability doesn't. And using comments like "well done," you're really good at that. You've really, that is, it's pretty average, and it's not helpful. And it leads into this, okay, I just have the skill, which is fixed. I've got it. You either got it or you don't. Effort is what matters. And it's the process orientation versus the outcome. Effort is, okay, you really worked hard at that. You've obviously been working hard and it seems like it's paying off. Look at how you've improved from session to session. Let's look at the improvement that you've made. Let's talk about where you need to continue to grow, but we're not going to spend a lot of time on that. Here's the error, here's the correction, and then dump it. And the worst thing that instructors do is they just go on and on about an error. That's like, from a neuroscientific perspective, you're actually making it worse because there's ways that we learn. Remember when you were a basic instructor, the laws of learning, readiness, exercise, effect, primacy, intensity, recency. See, those are real things. And harping and sitting there on an error, all you're doing is actually integrating that into their psyche. You want to address the error, provide the corrective action, and then get it out of there as quick as possible so that they don't integrate it. And you want to be able to acknowledge the effort that they put in that was had a good result.
When I was an instructor, well before I really gained the insight into the things we're talking about now, I did talk about ability, but I used it in a different and I think I was walking down that path, or at least part of it, without totally understanding all of it. But I would say, hey, you have the ability, you have all the skills you need, but if you don't put forth the effort and the time, all this, it's like potential energy versus kinetic. You can have all the potential, but if you don't put it into use and work at it and put in forth that effort, it's just going to sit there. You're not going to, just because you're the smartest guy in the room doesn't mean anything if you don't put forth the effort to be able to use that intellect and apply it and grow from it. And that was the way I had approached it back then.
Here's the problem with providing praise. Well, I would say here's the problem with talent and inborn ability. You can't control that. I mean, you're 7 feet tall. Could you control that? No. You just got faster twitch response. Muscle. You can't control that. You can take G's. Some people just can pull G's better than others. Some people just can't handle them. A lot of that is there's not, and this is about control. You don't focus on things that you cannot control. That is wasted time and it's wasted energy. And the problem with focusing on inborn talent and ability is that's not something that they can control. But effort and your ability to stay in the process, that is something you do have the ability to control. And that's why you focus on that. Focusing on what you can't control is a complete garbage waste of time. And that's why you do not want to focus on inborn talent. You only focus on effort and the ability to stay in the process. The outcome is the outcome. Like if you actually put in effort and it yields a good outcome, that's great. If you put in effort and it doesn't yield a good outcome, that's just part of the game. You got to figure out how to make some tweaks, and maybe you've got to put some more effort in, or maybe you need more time. But you do not praise things that are just inborn, where there's no locus of control. You only focus on things where you can have control.
I get, and just to go down that rabbit hole just a little bit more, I guess when I was saying it, and I would even look at it even now more so, it's not so much to give praise, but it's like to put a baseline, because like I have 5 children, and one of them has challenges, special needs, and what was the difference between one of them and the other? As far as you're right, I couldn't control it. That one was unfortunately handed a greater challenge than the others based on
Yep.
what they had. The point I was trying to make is just because you have those things means nothing if you don't put forth the effort to
Yes.
utilize what you have. Just because you have it, and because by the time I received them as students, they were in their 20s. So they'd had 20 years of people talking about, or they had, people say, hey, you've got all the potential, you got all this. Okay, great. We've established you have it.
Yeah.
What are you going to do with it? Because I think I gave on one of the last, on one of our previous podcasts, I talked about 2 people in my squadron. One had so much ability, and then there was another one that didn't have quite as much, but worked his butt off and I believe became so much better than he I think he would have been, but he put forth that effort. And that's what I think, like I said, mine was kind of maybe not the way you would have done it, but it was an end around run to say,
well, look, we didn't know this. We didn't know this stuff. It used to be the opposite. It was hammer on hammer on the ability, and just like really praise that. And look, you need praise in the training environment. You have to praise. But what I'm saying is praise the process and effort, not the inborn talent and inborn ability. That's it. You got to give praise, but just know what you're praising. As an instructor, that's really, really important. If you want to, again, the question was, how do you train an elite mindset? This is how. And this is science. There's science behind it. It's not voodoo. It's science. We know this. So, and people grow at different rates. People do. There's like the learning plateaus, and everybody, everybody's going to grow at their own rate. Yes, there are standards that you kind of have to keep people in. There are expectations. You've got to be able to grow at a certain pace, or you're not going to be able to keep up. But there's going to be variance.
And you need to understand that there's a consolidation phase. You grow, you plateau, like you say, consolidate, and which allows you to build that up so you can grow again.
Yes.
And it's not a steady slope. It isn't a constant slope. There will be pauses, like you say, plateaus, consolidation, whatever term you want to use. You have to have that.
Growth is an intentional process of learning and application. Yep. We can grow by accident, as a result of falling short. But I pursue intentional learning and growth, and accept that accidental learning and growth, it just happens when it occurs. But it's much better to be intentional. And I think as an instructor, we want to pursue intentional learning and growth. You do have to address areas of weakness. That's okay. It's not just like, oh, everything's great. You really worked hard. Yes, you did work hard, and this is where things are weak that we need to address. I mean, that's just part of the process. So that's and then there's, you got to understand signs of success. You got to be able to look for that. What's a quick, easy, okay, here's a good one. This is something that I think is really important. There's something called, E plus R equals O. Event plus response equals outcome. One way to help clients with determining kind of where they're at, where their mindset is there's this in sports psychology, there's a concept that we use a lot, and I use it with aviation all the time, is light signals. What are your light signals? If you think about a light, what are the lights we got? We got green light, we got yellow light, we got red light. Green light is go, right? Things are good, everything's smooth, no issues. That's a green light. Yellow light is okay, there may be an issue here. Red light is full stop. And we get in situations, and ourselves and our students can get in situations where they are, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's starting to fall apart, sometimes it has gone off the rails. And helping students understand and helping instructors be able to identify where a student is helping them understand, where are you? What are your signals as to where you are? So if you think about and there's three kind of tells in terms of determining your light signals: your body language, and you can see it with students. So think about when everything's good. I mean, what do you think that student's body language looks like when things are good?
Usually relaxed and open. Or you
Open.
don't see people's arms crossed, or
Right.
their jaws are not clenched, or
Yep.
they're not looking down, their shoulders are not slumped.
Death gripping the yoke. They're just they're present. They're just engaged in the process of what's happening. Now, when things start to fall apart, what does the body language look like? I mean, just imagine you're sitting in the
exact
center.
opposite. It's all tensed. It's
you see them
short.
squirming.
Yep. Or non-responsive.
Or starting to shut down. Yep. That's another one. But there's a change that happens. You see that, and then when it's full blown,
physical, like you say, it's
totally.
If you can't, as an instructor, you need to know that, because those can be danger signs, huge danger signs.
Big time.
If you don't recognize those things, you need to start. You're not looking.
You got to pay attention.
You're not interpreting what you see.
Right.
Very well.
And then red light, full stop, is just totally closed off, right? I mean, shut down. It's almost like the depressive stance of just leaned over.
It's almost like letting go of the yoke and just going.
Yeah, it's just resignation, just shut, just that's it, full stop. So there's body language. Focus. When we're focused, where is our focus when we're green light? There's real good science on this. What's in front of you?
Yep.
That's it. You are focused on exactly what you're doing. You're not focused on, anything but what's happening, process orientation. When it's starting to go yellow, there's starting to do the dangers. What's happening with the focus? It's becoming distracted. Starting to get wrapped around the axle a little bit. The guy's starting to stare at the light, the landing gear light, instead of flying the plane. Remember that Eastern crash that went to the Everglades? They just got totally derailed with their attention and where they were focusing. Now, when it's a full-blown red light, where's the focus? I'll tell you what, in the training environment, here's where it is, instructor. When they are solely flying for your approval, that's a red light. There's a lack of commandability. They're just totally concerned that you're watching, what you're seeing. Are you happy as the instructor? Are you happy with what they're seeing, with what they're doing? They're just trying to work the outcome. They've lost the process, and they're just trying to figure out, how do I pass? How do I pass? How do I pass?
Or they're waiting for input.
One of
the things that I would say is, for focus, as an instructor, ask yourself, what would, at whatever moment you are in that training point, whether it's flying an ILS or taking off, where would your focus be? And look and go, is your students' focus where they should be focusing on? Are they focusing on their instruments when they should be, or are they not?
But I'm talking about, let me just reel you in here, man. We're talking about red light. when the
No, I was talking about,
focus,
I was including yellow and red because you
right, yellow and
put it
red.
together.
Well, yellow goes to red, right?
Yep.
But when they are not focusing on what they're doing, and they're focusing on outcome orientations, and that includes, does the instructor approve of what I'm doing? They've lost it. That's red. They're in a red light place, and they need to get back to green, because don't fly for the instructor, fly for you. It's your flight. It's your training event. But when you're just focusing, I mean, I was talking to a guy named Roy Liggett last night. Roy Liggett, for those that are United Airlines pilots, Roy was a chief pilot back in the. Do you know
He was
Roy?
one of my oh yeah,
Roy,
I know him, and I know his son too.
His son
Right.
flies, right? I don't know his son, but I know Roy really well. I mean,
Yeah.
Roy and I have
Outstanding
good
chief
relationship.
pilot.
Yeah, he's a wonderful guy. He does so much to help the pilots. And
Dulles chief pilot.
yeah, he called me last night. He's 81, and we were just checking in. We were just chatting a little bit, and he said when he would instruct, and when he would do it, he would, in the training center, he would go in to the classroom with his pilots, and he would write FTFA on the board, and he'd just write it down on the board, wouldn't discuss it. And he would start talking, and they'd kind of they'd sort of brief what's going on. And as Roy, he's got that gruff voice.
Yep.
He's so great. He's such an incredible person. And he would say, okay, well, let's go get some coffee, before we get in the sim. And they would say, well, Roy, what, you wrote that on the board though, we didn't cover that. And he goes, oh yeah, well, what do you think that stands for? And they'd look at it and they go, I don't know. FTFA. Fly the freaking airplane. Fly the freaking airplane. That's all I'm going to leave you guys with. And he said sometimes that would it would get into that, they would get it, but other times it's like they would start to stray from that. And he'd be sitting in the instructor seat in the sim, and he'd say, hey, guys, remember what I wrote on the board? What's going on here? Like, oh yeah, you're right. Okay, yeah, you focus on this, I'll focus on that, right? Because you can get distracted, or if they start worrying about what he's thinking as the evaluator. And we were talking about this. I mean, Roy he's not thinking about elite mindsets and all this stuff. This is just practical things, but that's really what he was doing, was keeping them into an elite mindset, which is stay in the process. Do not worry about just the inborn talent. Worry about your effort. So we're talking about light signals, body language, focus, know where you are, know where your students are. I think as an instructor, if they start trying to worry about what you're thinking, they're in a yellow or going to red pretty quick. Got to get them out of that. It's your flight, guys and gals. Take control. And then the last is self-talk. How are you talking to yourself? Now, when you're in green, how do you talk to yourself when you're in green? What do you think?
Well, I've seen the gambit with that.
But for you, just reflect on your own experience. When things are good,
when things are good, I'm pretty quiet.
You're quiet. There's no event. There's nothing going on. You're just doing what's in front of you. You're just doing what's in front of you. How about yellow?
Yellow, I start going, it's like I usually am, I don't know how to say this, but I'm usually kind of aware when I'm not quite where I need to be. And I start saying, okay, it's like, Karl, I focus on whatever maybe, hey, we're on your airspeed, or hey, your altitude control. I mean, it's like I'm talking to myself and kind of reassure myself, hey, just get back to where you can be, because you've done it for so long. It's my way of kind of getting me it's like I'm the instructor to myself.
But here's the thing. Of course, we're professional aviators, right? We know how to do this. And it's not about I'm always in green. No, nobody's always in green. We all go into yellow and we all go into red. And anybody that says that they don't is full of shit. Yes, you do, because you have a human brain. So when be tired,
watch how fast when you're tired, like on a long haul flight, watch how fast you go to red.
You go to red super quick. So the self-talk, certainly for me and what I observed with my clients, is when we start to become oriented on the outcome, when we start to become self-critical, critical of others, is we're getting into a yellow and possibly going into red. Look, you've got to determine what your signs are for that. But this is a way to determine, and think about the stall. We talk about the stall as like it's sort of like the most important analogy of anything. If you don't know you're stalling, you can't recover. And your attempts to recover are going to be paradoxical. You're going to be, are going to be like, get you into a worse situation. You're going to be pulling really hard when actually you need to push. And it's the same with this. Yeah, exactly. 3 minutes sitting in a stall, not understanding they're in a stall. And look, it happens. It's not because they were just terrible pilots and that it's very confusing up there. If you don't know what's going on, and you get some adrenaline and you get fear and you get late at night and you get fatigue and you get all sorts of other factors in there, this happens. And it's the same thing with decompensating in the simulator. Is, instructors see it all the time. It goes to hell fast. And what happened? It's the mental game. At this level, you know what you're doing. It's not like, fundamentals aren't there. No, when it goes to hell is they lost the process, they got into a red, and they couldn't recover because, they didn't have the tools to figure out how to recover with that. This is a mental game. I don't care what anybody says. It's a mental game. And so
back to mindset, like you said.
It's back to mindset. And, knowing your light signals, or knowing the light signals of your students, is really important. Are you green? Are you yellow? Are you red? And it's going to happen, but you've got to figure out how to get your way back. So let's reverse engineer it now. Let's say I'm in a red light with my body language. Well, how can I fix it? Well, change your body language, right? You start getting freaked out, start getting scared because you're like, oh my God, this is going bad, right? I'm kind of feeling over my head. Sit up straight. Relax your muscles, get your jaw loose, right?
I think we talked about on one of the recent ones where I wiggle my toes. It's kind of hard to keep your hands clenched on the yoke when you're
hold the pencil like this, because you can't death grip it, right? Just use trim. Try to fly, let go, see what it does. Do a lot of letting go. And you're like, okay, because what you're doing is you're sending the signal to your brain, I don't need adrenaline, because there's no freeze, fight, or run here. You can reverse engineer this thing. Your brain talks to your body, but your body actually can talk back to the brain. So when you relax your muscles, it tells your brain, I don't need adrenaline, and it shuts the adrenaline off. And so that's the body language. Focusing is a flashlight. Where you focus your attention is where your energy goes. And if you find, that's Roy, what he was talking about, FTFA. If your focus starts to become off of the airplane and getting into like other things, you need to re-establish where you're pointing the beam. That's, in many respects, that's pretty simple. The hardest part is just knowing when you've lost focus. If you're focusing on the instructor, whether they're approving or not, you're getting into yellow and red. You need to go, okay, wait a minute. I'm going to focus on what I'm doing. Forget him or her. Forget the instructor. This is my airplane. This is my flight. This is my training event. I'm going to do this for me. That's refocusing your attention into the process, and the process is better than the outcome. And the self-talk, if it's going, oh shit, I'm here we go again, or whatever self-talk you start to give yourself, judging yourself, judging others, becoming distracted with even some people get giddy when they're starting to lose it. And so change the way that you're talking to yourself around that to get yourself out of the red into the yellow, back to the green. So that's just like, hopefully that's a good, there's a lot more to this, but I think these are practical. I hope that's a practical application that an instructor can take and start to apply and start to play around with and have some fun with it. Like, enjoy this, and even like talk to your students a little bit about it. I think that you'll be surprised with the result that you can yield out of it.
I got a quick comment and then a question for you. The comment is, when you were talking about when there's a weakness or a less than optimum result, is so much of how you approach it can help define what occurs afterwards. And what I mean by that is, don't don't make your comments destructive, make them constructive.
Yes.
Because if, tearing the person down and saying, God, that really sucked, or you sucked, as an example, what have you accomplished? You haven't done anything positive.
Nothing.
But
Nothing.
constructive is where you take it and go, okay, well, like I said, that didn't work out quite the way you thought. But look at all the tools that you learned and what the things you can do with it. And here, how can we make it better? And so now you're taking it as again, back to that learning moment. So that again also helps with the mindset, so that the person doesn't feel like, God, they already don't feel great about it, and you just made them feel worse.
Yeah.
Versus making them go, you know what? Boy, talk about the silver lining. Thank you.
I agree. I mean, I think, and I've tell my clients, listen, if kicking you in the ribs would help, I'll come over and kick you in the ribs, but it's not going to help. So look, if you just think they suck and you're pissed because they suck, that's fine. You can do that, whatever. It doesn't matter. But your job is to help them improve, and berating them and browbeating them and telling them that they're crap isn't going to help them. And spending all your time debriefing the errors is like the stupidest thing you can do in terms of cognitive science of how people learn. You address the error, you provide the corrective action, and you move on quickly. You celebrate all of the stuff that they did correct, because that gets into the self-image. And there's 3 pillars. Maybe we'll talk about this next week. There's 3 pillars of performance. There's what you think about. There is your muscle memory, what you don't think about. And there is your self-image. And the self-image is, that's like me. What is the image you have of yourself? And if your self-image is busted up, it doesn't matter how much experience you have. It doesn't matter how great your ability to concentrate is. If your self-image sucks, your performance is going to be terrible. And this is with the highest level elite athletes, elite CEOs, elite pilots. If your self-image is crap, you're done. And so you've got to learn how to integrate the good things. And good instructors, I mean, I was used to think like of students that like they make one mistake, and A is they just don't recover, or that's all they think about is the mistake they made, when they did, for every one mistake they made, they had 100 things that they did correctly. Yet they don't remember a single thing that they did correctly. All they do is focus on the mistake. And it's like, you know what? That makes you a weak pilot when you do that, because you have no mind strategies. So it's really, really important that you continue to help students work on their self-image and work on making sure that that's intact, while being able to give them the active directive corrections that they need in order to progress.
And to put an exclamation point on that, your job is to be an instructor. If you're basically tearing them down, where is the instruction in that? Just think about it. How are you instructing them when all you're doing is basically, berating them on how bad they did?
Yeah.
The question I wanted to ask you, and it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier when you said there's never been a time like this for the number of pilots that are needed, and like you say, we'll talk about ab initio and stuff like that in the future. But it does beg it does fit into this conversation, because not only are the pilots that are flying for a regional or a corporate or major airline really young, so are the instructors. A lot of times the instructors that are doing the instructing are not much further along in the experience category than the students that are teaching.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it used to be with the primary instruction, private instrument commercials, the joke was it's, first graders teaching kindergartners. It's actually now moved up into the professional level, is very inexperienced. It's like first graders teaching kindergartners. Now, yes, they're at a higher level and they've got more experience, but it's unprecedented. And so it's really important. You can't just rely on muscle memory. Every instructor's got 20,000 hours and every pilot's got 10,000 hours. It's more and more important now than ever that people are that the instructors and the pilots are training the mental game versus just relying on the amount of muscle memory and experience that they have.
The question I was going to ask you is this, and that is, beyond what you've talked to them about, what would you, to help them on their own personal quiet time, what would be a good, what would be something that would be good for them to read? Any books you would recommend? Any other things outside of it, especially when it comes to mindset? Now we're talking about mindset. Anything that you would want to throw out there right now, or
there's a lot. There's Mindset by Carol Dweck. That's like probably the most important book you could read on mindset. There's Mind Gym by Gary Mack. There's the 80-20 Principle by Richard Koch. That covers mindset. Heads Up Baseball, Ken Reveza. That book changed my life. The Mental Game of Baseball by Harvey Dorfman. This is sports, but I come from a baseball, background. One Word by John Gordon. I got a huge library of books on mindset, but I would just start with Carol Dweck. That's pivotal, and it's research based. It's not, like anecdotal. It's science, and I think it's important to use the science. Start with Carol Dweck, Mindset.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Maybe we'll cover that, but maybe we'll do a book review.
Yeah, I think we've talked about doing that, and every now and then do book reviews.
Yeah, if people want it, let us know. If you want a book review, I can summarize a book so you don't have to read it. I can give you, because I've read them tons of times and I got tons of notes, and I can give you the takeaways.
Matt McNeil, the Klepster. He'll klep anything for you.
Pretty much.
Well,
so anyways, enough of that.
What would be your one takeaway from today that you want people to have?
Easy, man. Praise the effort, not the talent. That's the takeaway. There's data behind it, and because that is growth, not fixed.
Short, sweet, and to the point.
That's it. Just like us. Just like me. Short, sweet, and to the point.
Oh my God. There is so much in that.
I know. Don't go there. Don't do it.
Hey, there's a podcast in just that one sentence. You have no idea. No idea. Yes.
Right here.
We can get, it doesn't take much to get down rabbit holes for us, but as you can see, there's so much depth to these things that whether it's questions from our listeners or things that we talk about on any given topic.
Yeah.
And we appreciate you listening. Please keep these kind of questions coming in, because as you can see, we do respond to them, and we don't give them just a 30-second response. So we thank you for sending them in. Please have them keep coming. The email address is podcast@LiftAffect.com. Also, hit the like button, share it with your friends. That we want to keep growing our listener base and reaching more people that need to hear what we have to offer. And we thank you. On behalf of Matt and myself, we look forward to seeing you on the next LiftAffect podcast. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the LiftAffect podcast. If you want to dive deeper into this episode and every episode, go to our website, liftaffect.com/podcast. If you're enjoying the show, we would love it if you'd follow us on Spotify and rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. We really appreciate your support. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, all with the ID Matthew McNeil. This show is brought to you by LiftAffect, a clinical mental health and consulting company that assists air carriers, corporate flight departments, pilot unions, and commercial pilots by providing comprehensive psychotherapy and mental skills coaching services to pilots with mental health and mental performance-related issues. Visit liftaffect.com, that's LiftAffect.com, to book your free consultation. And finally, this podcast is for general informational purposes only. It does not constitute the practice of counseling, psychotherapy, medicine, or any other healthcare service, including the giving of medical advice. No therapeutic or provider-patient relationship is formed. The use of this information and any materials linked to this podcast is at the user's own risk. The content of this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional psychological advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Users should not disregard or delay in obtaining advice for any psychological or medical condition they have, and they should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on the LiftAffect podcast.